I would like to ask you about the situation with the Palestinian state. We can see that there are some countries which are actually declaring that they see Palestine as a state. What would be an outcome for Israel? How do you evaluate this situation? Is it a problem? Or maybe Israel can find positive sides of this process?
I must say that I think that the announcement by Spain and by the Irish government, and I think by Norway, is not productive. I'm very much in favor. This is only a declaration. This is not a creation of a Palestinian state, and it doesn't move forward towards the creation of a Palestinian state. I'm fighting for a two-state solution for a very long time. I presented the Palestinian president in 2008 a comprehensive peace plan on behalf of the state of Israel. At that time, I was the prime minister of the state of Israel, and I presented a peace plan that is based on a two-state, a Palestinian state on the basis of the 67 borders. And at that time, they didn't, unfortunately, they didn't respond positively. Now, the creation of a Palestinian state has to be the product of a bilateral negotiating process between Israel and the Palestinians. If there will not be a peace process between the two, there will not be a Palestinian state. There will be declarations. So I don't see any advantage for the Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain making a declaration that Spain recognizes a state which does not exist. And it will only be established if there will be a due process of negotiations and an agreement that will allow Israel to pull out from the territories, the Palestinians to commit themselves to the comprehensive peace and non-belligerency and non-terror between us and them. And this is something that must be negotiated. And I'm very much in favor of negotiations on this direction.
So I would like to ask you about the situation in Gaza. We see that there was a strike yesterday, and it was massive. And Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that this is a tragic mistake. But there were other tragic mistakes before as well, as you know, with volunteers for the humanitarian organization, and foreigners died, as you saw it like couple of months ago. How do you see this wave of criticism coming from the European countries, coming from the West towards Bibi? Do you think that he is responsible in some way in the circumstances?
I don't think that he is responsible for this particular tragic explosion which killed 30 or 35 people. This is a tragic event. I don't think that he is responsible for this particular event, but I think that he is responsible for continuing the war, which I am very much opposed to. I said already 4 months ago, I said it since then 100 times in every possible network in the world and in every possible network in the state of Israel, in the papers and in the television. I say that we don't have to invade Rafah. We have to stop the war now, because what we need to do is to bring back the hostages, and there is not a chance to bring the hostages without stopping the war. So whether I like this outcome or not, this is the only possible thing to achieve something that will be of consequence to the future. We have to stop now. And that means that there will not be an absolute victory for Israel, as perhaps Netanyahu anticipated or declared that he wants to achieve. But the victory of Israel will be to bring back the hostages, as many alive as we can. And every day that passes, the likelihood that there will be more hostages dead than alive. So this is the main thing. And now I don't want to comment on the reactions in Europe, because I don't need the reactions in Europe. As I said time and again, in the most explicit manner, in the most forceful manner in Israel, that we need to stop the war, period.
So you stop the war, but how would you guarantee that the terroristic organization Hamas would stop the strikes against Israel, would stop the terroristic acts against Israel? I understand that this is a very global question and there is no straight answer for it. But still, do you see a way out in this stalemate situation?
There is a very simple answer. Of course, I'm fully aware of what you asked. And in my proposal and in my statements in Israel, a more comprehensive outline of my approach is that we have to have an international intervention force that will step into Gaza instead of Israel. This is something that we did at the end of the Second Lebanese War in 2006. And it worked all right. For 17 years, we didn't have one bullet shot from Lebanon into Israel after the Second Lebanese War. So this is what we have to do now. I said that we have to stop the war, but we will pull out from Gaza in part of a process whereby an intervention force will step into Gaza in order to prevent Hamas from trying to regain their dominant position, which is something that can be done and ought to be done. If the Europeans and the Americans don't want Israel to stay in Gaza, and they don't want us to stay, and since the Palestinians and the Arab countries are not yet ready now to stay, so my proposal is that they will prepare their forces. In the meantime, there will be an international intervention force of European countries taking over Gaza, starting to build Gaza with the assistance of the international and the state of Israel and the Arab countries, and will block completely the Hamas.
I got it.
A year or two, the Arab countries and the Palestinians will take over Gaza. Gaza is Palestinian. It's not part of Israel. We don't need to stay there. We entered Gaza in order to try and reach out for the killers, murderers of Hamas. And I think that we have done a great deal in this direction, and it's now the time to stop.
But the last question I would like to ask you about is about the warrant that the prosecutor of International Criminal Court is asking for Benjamin Netanyahu. And, you know, as a Russian journalist, I cannot stop thinking about this comparison between Benjamin Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin, who has got this kind of warrant. So does this mean that International Criminal Court is saying that these people, Vladimir Putin, invader of Ukraine, the person responsible for thousands of lives in Ukraine, stands on the same level for this criminal court as Benjamin Netanyahu? How would you evaluate this situation?
My personal opinion is that the country that Netanyahu is the prime minister of should take care of Netanyahu and not an international court. I think that the arrest warrant is unnecessary and certainly something that we can't accept and we will not accept, and therefore I don't want to go into a comparison with Putin. It's irrelevant in this context. I want to get rid of Netanyahu, not because of what he did to the Palestinians, but because of what he did to the Israelis. He's corrupt, he's reckless, he's irresponsible, he's arrogant, he's complacent, is overconfident government that led Israel into a terrible disaster that we now have to get somehow out of victoriously, which is very difficult, with thousands who were killed because of his negligence and his arrogance. So I don't need the International Court of Justice or the Criminal Court to take care. We have to, in a democratic manner, in elections, that ought to be taken very close to get rid of Netanyahu and replace him with someone that will be responsible, that will be aiming at creating a momentum of peaceful negotiations, that will stop the war, and that will make sure that the security of the state of Israel is protected under all circumstances, not as he did on the 7th of October.
Thank you so much for your answers. I really appreciate you being here in our show.
We operated in Russia for 12 years, and the government tried to get rid of us 3 times. They got us on the 6th day of the war in Ukraine.
Мы временно приостанавливаем работу телеканала.
We left Russia, but we kept going. We have now decided to tell the truth about Russia, the war, and Russian society in English as well.
Kherson is Putin's third major defeat in a row.
What is wrong with the Russian army?
Stories no one else can tell you. Hear it right from the source. Subscribe to our channel.